YandR Spoilers Weekly Update. Phyllis busted, Devon's chase, Kane unconscious. The Young and the Restless spoilers are in for the week of February 9th, 2026. Fans can expect Phyllis Summers, Michelle Stafford, to get busted. Kane Ashby, Billy Flynn, is found unconscious. Plus, Devon Winters, Brighton James, chases Mariah Copeland, Cameron Grimes, and Dominic Newman, Abbott Winters Chancellor, Ethan Ray Clark. Keep reading to find out what is coming up in the CBS soap opera. Chasing Mariah Copeland. Let's start off with Mariah and Dominic. Fans know that Mariah's scarf was left at the Chancellor estate. Then, video footage showed Mariah with Dominic at a hotel near Genoa City. However, they were soon gone. A weekly preview clip shows that Mariah and Dom stopped to eat at a diner. While there, the boy wants to know why Mariah won't stay where they are headed. The redhead finally admits that they are going to leave the country. Meanwhile, Sharon Newman, Sharon Case, blames herself for Mariah's crime. Of course, that is ridiculous. Mariah is a grown woman, and she's responsible for her own actions. However, it is understandable why Sharon feels like she failed Mariah. To be honest, there was a lot going on. Noah Newman's, Lucas Adams, coma kind of took precedent over Mariah's mental health crisis. After all, Mariah was in the clinic at the time, so Schick truly believed she was getting the help she needed. Don't worry, though. Devon and Abby quickly get a lead on the disappearing duo. Nick Newman watched. The Young and the Restless spoilers for the week of February 9th reveal that Victoria Newman, Amelia Heinley, will keep an eye on Nick Newman, Joshua Morrow. With Nick headed for an addiction storyline, will Victoria see the signs before it's too late? Kane Ashby unconscious. Over with Victor Newman, Eric Braden. The patriarch ends up having an explosive confrontation. When Adam Newman, Mark Grossman, shows up, he is horrified to see Kane lifeless on the ground. I don't think Kane is dead, but he's definitely in some big trouble. What exactly does Victor plan to do with him now? What else to expect? As for what else to expect, Jack Abbott, Peter Bergman, comforts Nikki Newman, Melody Thomas Scott. However, Diane Jenkins Abbott, Susan Walters, just happens to see. Also, Claire Grace Newman, Haley Aaron, keeps her true motivation from Holden Novak, Nathan Owens. Billy Abbott, Jason Thompson, and Phyllis end up getting busted. As for Valentine's Day, Billy tries to woo Sally Spectra, Courtney Hope. Adam works hard to impress Chelsea Lawson, Melissa Claire Egan. Also, Noah Newman, Lucas Adams goes after Sienna Bacall, Tamara Braun. Which storyline are you looking forward to seeing the most during the week of February 9th, 2026? Share your thoughts in the comment section below. Remember to keep watching the soap on CBS or Paramount Plus to find out what a razor-thin line between genius manipulation and outright self-destruction. She's always believed she's the smartest person in the room. And for a long time, that belief kept her one step ahead of everyone else. But this week, her luck runs out. It starts subtly. A misplaced phone. A delayed text. A security log that doesn't quite add up. Phyllis is convinced she's still in control, but the walls are closing in fast. The lies she's told, to protect herself, to protect her children, to protect whatever version of the truth she finds most convenient, begin colliding. And when they collide, they explode. The bust is brutal. Not dramatic screaming or a slow, elegant reveal. This is worse. It's the kind of exposure that happens in a crowded room, where silence falls and every eye turns toward her at once. Evidence is laid out. Timelines are exposed. Her carefully crafted narrative unravels thread by thread. What makes it sting even more? The look on Phyllis's face. Not guilt. Not shame. Fear. Because this time, she knows she can't talk her way out of it. Old allies hesitate. Former enemies smirk. And the realization hits her like a punch to the chest. She's alone. The Queen of Spin has finally spun herself into a corner she can't escape. Devon Hamilton, from protector to predator. While Phyllis's world collapses in plain sight, Devon Hamilton is on the move, and his pursuit is far more dangerous than anyone realizes. Devon doesn't chase recklessly. He calculates, observes, waits. And then he strikes. Something has set him off, something deeply personal. This isn't about business or money or even power. This is about betrayal. About a line that was crossed and can't be uncrossed. The chase begins quietly. Devon follows leads others dismiss. He notices patterns where others see coincidence. Every step brings him closer to the truth, and closer to someone who desperately doesn't want to be found. What makes Devon terrifying right now is his calm. He's not yelling. He's not threatening. He's focused, controlled, and absolutely relentless. The man who once tried to build bridges is now burning them behind him, one by one. Those around him sense the shift. Lily worries he's going too far. Nate warns him to slow down. But Devin doesn't listen. Because in his mind, slowing down means letting someone get away with something unforgivable. By the time Devin finally catches up to his target, it's clear. This chase was never about justice. It was about reckoning. Kane Ashby, a body on the floor, a city in shock. Just when Genoa City thinks it's seen the worst, Kane Ashby is found unconscious, and everything grinds to a halt. The scene is chilling. No witnesses. No immediate explanation. Just Kane, motionless, vulnerable, and surrounded by questions no one is ready to answer. Was it an accident? An attack? Or something far more calculated? Kane's past makes him an easy target for suspicion. He's burned bridges, made enemies, and inserted himself into situations he had no business being part of. But the brutality of what's happened to him suggests motive. Strong motive. As news spreads, reactions ripple across the city. Some are genuinely worried. Others are guarded. A few are uncomfortably silent. Because Kane knew things. Things he shouldn't have. Things that might have made him dangerous. And now, with Kane unable to speak, those secrets hang in the air like a ticking time bomb. The threads begin to cross. Here's where it gets messy, and very YandR. Phyllis's downfall, Devin's chase, and Kane's collapse aren't separate stories. They're pieces of the same puzzle, whether anyone wants to admit it or not. Phyllis may be busted, but she's still holding on to fragments of information that could blow this wide open. Devin may be chasing one truth, but he's barreling toward another. One that could implicate people he never expected. And Kane? Kane might be the missing link connecting everything. If he wakes up. Whispers spread through Genoa City. Did Phyllis know Kane was in danger? Did Devin cross paths with Kane during his pursuit? And most chilling of all, was Kane silenced? The timing is too perfect. The coincidence is too convenient. Someone is lying. Possibly more than one someone. Power shifts and crumbling loyalties. As these events unfold, alliances start to crack. People who once stood firmly on one side begin hedging their bets. Trust erodes fast when survival is on the line, and Genoa City residents are nothing if not survivors. Phyllis, desperate and exposed, starts reevaluating every relationship she has left. Who might still help her? And who's waiting to finish her off? Devin, meanwhile, risks alienating everyone who cares about him. His obsession threatens to undo years of progress, both personally and professionally. The question isn't whether he'll uncover the truth, it's whether he'll recognize himself when he does. And Kane's condition forces people to confront uncomfortable realities about how far things have gone. Whatever game is being played now, it's no longer theoretical. Someone almost died. What happens next? The fallout is inevitable and explosive. Phyllis being busted doesn't mean her story is over. If anything, it makes her more dangerous. With nothing left to lose, she could decide to take everyone down with her. Devin's chase is approaching a breaking point. When the truth finally lands, it won't just answer questions, it will shatter lives. And Kane's fate remains the biggest wild card. If he wakes up, he could expose everything. If he doesn't, someone may have gotten exactly what they wanted. One thing is certain, Genoa City is entering a new phase of chaos. The kind where secrets don't just come out, fair share of heartbreaks, betrayals, and shocking revelations, but nothing quite like the whirlwind that Mariah Copeland seemed to stir wherever she went. Once considered the quietest shadow of the infamous Newman legacy, Mariah had evolved into a force impossible to ignore. And yet, as much as she tried to carve out her own identity, the world around her never stopped chasing her. Not just the literal pursuers, but the ghosts of her past, her tangled family loyalties, and the dangerous secrets she carried. It started innocuously enough, a text message. Mariah's phone buzzed late one evening while she was sipping tea in the quiet solitude of her apartment. It was from an unknown number. "We know what you did. Meet me at Crimson Lights. Midnight." Her pulse spiked, a mix of irritation and curiosity. Why did people always think she was running from something? And more importantly, who even was chasing her this time? Midnight in Genoa City wasn't exactly the safest hour, but Mariah's life had conditioned her to danger, to tension, to living on the edge of anxiety. She slipped into her coat, checked the rearview mirror twice as she drove, and parked across the street from the coffee house. Crimson Lights was dim and empty, save for a single figure hunched in the corner. As she approached, the figure looked up. It was someone she hadn't seen in years, an old friend turned adversary, Theo Blaze. Theo was the kind of man who smiled like he was hiding a dagger. "Mariah," he drawled, his voice smooth, too smooth. "Long time no see." Cut the act, Theo. What do you want? She asked, keeping her voice even. I think you know, he said, leaning forward. It's about your father's secrets about the Newman fortune. Her stomach tightened. The Newman name carried weight, power, scandal, endless complications. But she had hoped to escape all that. I don't know what you're talking about, she said, though the lie felt flimsy. Theo smirked, clearly enjoying her discomfort. Don't play coy. You were the one who found the ledger, the one who realized Victor had hidden accounts nobody knew about. And now, I'm here to claim what's mine. Mariah froze. The ledger. The one piece of evidence that could either destroy or protect the Newman empire, depending on who wielded it. She had been keeping it secret, buried in a safe only she knew about. And now Theo, the kind of man who could manipulate any situation, was threatening to drag her into a game she wasn't ready to play. But Mariah Copeland was no longer the scared little girl who had spent her childhood overshadowed by the Newman legacy. She drew in a breath and let her resolve harden. If you think you're taking anything from me, you're mistaken, she said. Theo's smile widened. We'll see about that. And with a flourish, he disappeared into the shadows, leaving Mariah with the unmistakable scent of danger lingering in the air. The following days were a blur. Mariah couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every time she left her apartment, she spotted the same black SUV circling the block. She changed routes, took different cabs, even pretended to be somewhere she wasn't, but it didn't help. Theo's reach was long, and it wasn't just him, she could feel it. Others were involved. People who had waited years for a chance to exploit her family's secrets. In the midst of the chaos, there was someone unexpected, Tessa Porter. Mariah's confidant, her best friend, and sometimes the voice of reason in her whirlwind life. Tessa had noticed the stress in Mariah's eyes, the constant checking of locks and windows. You're being hunted, Tessa said one evening, concern etched across her face. You can't keep doing this alone. Mariah shook her head. I can handle it. I always have. Tessa sighed. You're not a superhero, Mariah. Even you need help. And for the first time, Mariah considered that maybe she couldn't do it alone. She reluctantly agreed to let Tessa help. But the two knew this wasn't just about dodging threats. It was about uncovering who had orchestrated this hunt, and why. The first lead came from a familiar face, Kevin Fisher. Kevin had a knack for digging up dirt and a history of making enemies out of friends, but he owed Mariah one. Or at least he claimed he did. Mariah, you've stirred a hornet's nest, Kevin said, examining the ledger. And these aren't just small-time crooks. Someone big wants this information. Someone with power. Mariah's mind raced. Victor? She asked cautiously. Kevin shook his head. No. Victor's tangled enough as it is. This is someone outside the family. Someone who knows the Newman Empire better than anyone. And they're patient. Dangerous. The words hit Mariah like a punch. She realized this wasn't just a chase, it was a calculated hunt. Someone had been waiting for the right moment, and she had stumbled right into their trap. The tension escalated when Theo made his move. One evening, Mariah returned home to find her apartment ransacked. Drawers emptied, papers scattered, and the safe gone. Panic surged through her. They're inside, she whispered to herself. But who? And how had they known where the ledger was? It was then that Mariah realized she couldn't just hide or run. She had to confront the threat directly. With Tessa's help, she tracked Theo to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. Shadows stretched across the cracked walls, the air thick with anticipation. You've come a long way for nothing, Theo sneered as Mariah stepped into the light. Give me the ledger, and I might let you walk away. Mariah stood her ground. I'm done running. A tense standoff ensued, every second stretching like an eternity. Then, unexpectedly, a familiar voice echoed from the shadows. Theo, you're not going anywhere. It was Cameron, Mariah's brother by bond, an unexpected ally. He had his own reasons for confronting Theo, reasons Mariah didn't fully understand. But in that moment, it didn't matter. They were a united front. The confrontation spiraled into chaos. Boxes toppled, a lamp shattered, and Theo made a break for the exit, the ledger clutched in his hand. Mariah lunged, grabbing it just as he slipped through a side door. They ran through the labyrinthine warehouse, the echoes of their footsteps mixing with the tension of the night. And then silence. Theo was gone, but the ledger was safe in Mariah's grasp. Breathless, she looked at Cameron. We did it. Cameron nodded. For now. But this isn't over. Someone bigger is still out there. Mariah realized he was right. Every step she took in life was being watched, analyzed, and manipulated. Every choice could have consequences far beyond her imagination. And yet, she also realized something else. For the first time in her life, she wasn't facing this alone. Over the next weeks, Mariah worked tirelessly, not just to protect the ledger, but to uncover the larger network trying to destabilize her life. Along the way, she encountered betrayals, some shocking, some heartbreaking. People she had trusted, allies she had counted on, even lovers who had claimed to care, were revealed to have their own agendas. But through it all, Mariah remained unbroken. Each challenge, each betrayal, each narrow escape hardened her resolve. She became smarter, faster, and more strategic. And as she navigated this dangerous world, she began to understand something critical. It wasn't just about survival. It was about reclaiming her identity. Not as a Copeland or a Newman, but as Mariah Copeland, the woman who always been a town built on secrets, power plays, and unexpected twists. But lately, the walls themselves seemed to be watching. At the center of the storm was Nick Newman, a man who had spent decades balancing business, family, and romance, only to realize that sometimes the most dangerous eyes were the ones silently observing him. Nick Newman watched became the unspoken phrase echoing through the corridors of Newman Enterprises, the whispers of insiders, and the tense silence of living rooms in the Newman mansion. But what did it mean? Who was watching and why? And what could Nick do when surveillance wasn't just physical? It was emotional, psychological, and relentlessly intimate. It all began subtly. Nick, busy managing Newman Enterprises, started noticing small anomalies. Files moved on his desk, faint reflections in windows suggesting someone outside, and emails that seemed slightly altered. At first, he dismissed them as stress-induced paranoia. After all, running one of the largest corporations in Genoa City came with a fair share of pressure. But when his most confidential strategies were leaked during a crucial board meeting, he knew it wasn't coincidence. Someone was watching, studying him, maybe even anticipating his moves. The first suspect was, naturally, Victor Newman. Victor had always been protective of his empire and unafraid to manipulate those closest to him, even his own son, for the sake of control. But Nick had learned over the years to read Victor's signals. This time, his father's eyes weren't those of a watchful guardian. They were puzzled, almost distant. Victor knew something was wrong, but it wasn't him orchestrating this. It had to be someone else. Across town, in a sleek, modern loft, someone was indeed watching. Cameras hidden in subtle corners, microphones masked as smoke detectors, and software that tracked emails, phone calls, and even footsteps. But the watcher wasn't a villain in the traditional sense. They were a shadow of Nick's past, someone who knew his habits, his weaknesses, and his patterns. It was the intimate knowledge of an insider that made the watching so dangerous. Nick's relationship with Phyllis had always been complicated, a dance of attraction and tension with a history that could fill volumes. But as the days passed, Nick started noticing Phyllis's own subtle shifts, questions that probed deeper than usual, pauses that felt strategic, and a certain guardedness in her demeanor. Could Phyllis be involved? The idea seemed impossible, yet fear has a way of making the impossible feel inevitable. Nick confronted her one night in the dimly lit living room of her apartment. "Phyllis, I feel like someone's watching me," Nick said, tension in his voice, fingers clenched on the edge of the sofa. Phyllis's expression softened, but there was a flicker of hesitation. "Nick, I would never." "I don't know," Nick interrupted, voice rising slightly. "Something's off. Files missing, emails leaked. Someone's in my head before I even get there." Phyllis reached for his hand, a gesture meant to soothe but also revealing her own unease. "Maybe it's not someone you know," she suggested, her voice careful, measured. "Maybe it's someone with resources. Someone who's obsessed with Newman Enterprises with you." Her words were a dagger. The idea of an obsessed outsider was terrifying. But the truth, Nick realized, was far more complicated. Whoever was watching had knowledge only a few people possessed, and they weren't just monitoring his business. They were studying his life, dissecting his relationships, analyzing the emotions he tried so hard to hide. The surveillance intensified. Nick began noticing subtle patterns. A black SUV parked near his favorite cafe, a shadow that lingered outside his home at night, and phone calls that seemed to echo in unfamiliar voices. The paranoia was exhausting, yet he couldn't afford to ignore it. He turned to Victor, knowing that his father's network was unmatched. Victor, predictably, was furious, but also analytical. "Nick, you've got enemies everywhere," Victor said, pacing his office. "But someone this precise? This personal? That's different. That's someone who knows you intimately." Start thinking about who has everything to gain from knowing every move you make. Nick's mind raced through a litany of possibilities: business rivals, ex-lovers, even allies who had turned against him. But it wasn't until he stumbled upon a hidden message in his own digital files that the chilling truth emerged. A single line of text disguised as a routine email read, "We see everything, Nick. Always." It wasn't a joke. It wasn't a threat without teeth. It was real, and it was terrifying. The discovery sent Nick into overdrive. He hired private investigators, invested in counter-surveillance technology, and started documenting every interaction: calls, meetings, even casual conversations. Yet, even with these measures, the feeling of being watched never abated. It wasn't just about privacy, it was about trust. Every friend, every colleague, every family member suddenly became a potential spy, a potential traitor. Meanwhile, the watcher observed Nick's reaction with almost sadistic precision. Every new security measure, every paranoid glance, every late-night strategy session was meticulously catalogued. The obsession wasn't just about Newman Enterprises. It was about Nick himself, the choices he made, the way he reacted under pressure, and the vulnerabilities he couldn't hide. Nick's personal life suffered the most. His children, especially his youngest, could sense the tension, the near-constant anxiety that clouded their father's presence. Conversations were guarded, laughter became rare, and the once safe spaces of family dinners turned into minefields of suspicion. Even Adam, Nick's often antagonistic brother, noticed the change. "You look like you've got ghosts in your closet," Adam said one evening, leaning against the kitchen counter with a smirk. "Or maybe someone else does." Nick didn't answer. He couldn't. The idea of someone pulling strings behind the scenes, watching, waiting, was too consuming. And yet, he couldn't let fear control him. He had to act. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. While reviewing security footage, Nick noticed a familiar pattern: a reflection in a window during an evening jog that mirrored a place he thought private. Tracing it back, he discovered an apartment building overlooking his usual running path. Inside, hidden cameras, microphones, and a meticulously kept dossier of his life awaited. And sitting there, reviewing the footage, was someone he never expected. Someone from his own past, someone whose motives were tangled with both affection and resentment. Confrontation was inevitable. Nick entered the apartment cautiously, heart pounding, eyes scanning the room. The watcher turned slowly, a calm smile on their face. "Nick," they said, voice eerily familiar. "You really didn't see this coming, did you?" Recognition hit like a freight train. It wasn't a business rival, not a random obsessed fan. It was someone who had been close, someone who knew him better than most. And their reasoning, twisted as it was, made a perverse kind of sense. Love, betrayal, ambition, and revenge wrapped in a dangerous, obsessive package. "Why?" Nick asked, struggling to maintain composure. Ashby's eyes fluttered beneath closed lids, a storm of shadows and light whirling behind them. The hospital room around him was sterile, silent, except for the rhythmic beeping of monitors and the occasional shuffling of nurses in the hallway. Sunlight pierced through the blinds, casting harsh lines across the linoleum floor, but Kane could not see. He could not hear. He was trapped somewhere in between, suspended in a fragile limbo where reality seemed a distant memory, and his mind drifted through fragments of moments he could barely grasp. It started with a blur. One moment he had been rushing down the corridors of Newman Enterprises, a folder clutched in his hand. The other moment a sudden, violent crash had hurled him into darkness. Pain radiated through him, not the sharp, immediate kind, but a dull, all-consuming ache that seemed to originate from every bone, every muscle, every corner of his consciousness. And yet there was something else beneath the pain, a whisper, an echo of a memory he could not name. In his mind he floated in a void illuminated by flashes of light. Sometimes golden, like sunlight on the beach in Australia, sometimes gray, cold, and heavy. He saw flashes of family, Lily with her eyes brimming with worry and love, his children, their laughter echoing faintly distorted as if through water. Jill, always poised and calculating, her expression unreadable. But these images were fleeting, shifting, morphing into faces he didn't recognize, faces that smiled and then vanished, leaving an emptiness that made his chest tighten. A voice called to him, faint, distant. "Kane! Kane, can you hear me?" It was Lily, her tone trembling with fear and determination. He tried to respond, to open his mouth, to speak her name, but it was as if the words were swallowed by the void. His mind grasped at them, desperate for connection, but all that emerged were echoes of soundless syllables lost in the darkness. He drifted further, deeper, into a dreamscape where reality had no form. There were rooms, but they were not rooms, just spaces with shifting walls and doors that opened into nothingness. In one moment, he found himself sitting at a table in the Ashby mansion, a place that no longer existed in the life he knew. He reached for a glass of water that wasn't there, and the table dissolved into sand, grains slipping through his fingers like time itself was betraying him. Then came the memory that broke through the haze, a memory of a fight. He saw himself standing in the Newman offices, confrontation etched into every line of his body. Adam Newman, fierce and calculating, his eyes locked on Kane with a dangerous mix of anger and something like admiration. The argument escalated, voices raised, accusations flying, but as Kane reached out to push Adam away, the scene fragmented into shards, each one sharper than glass. Kane felt the sting, the impact, the betrayal, but it was not physical this time. It was a revelation, a truth he had buried deep, clawing its way to the surface. "Wake up, Kane," another voice whispered. This one was softer, gentler. It was not Lily, but someone else, someone who mattered, though Kane could not yet place them. The voice carried warmth, safety, but also a faint thread of urgency, pulling him back from the abyss. He wanted to move, to reach out, to cling to it, but the weight of his body, or what remained of it, kept him pinned, motionless, a prisoner within himself. And then came the dreams, the vivid, disturbing, impossible dreams that only an unconscious mind could conjure. Kane was on a boat, adrift on a stormy sea, the waves towering like walls of glass. He could hear the crash of water in his ears, smell the brine, feel the salt sting his skin, yet he could not see beyond the horizon. Figures emerged from the fog. Colin Atkinson, his face a mask of menace, Genevieve, her smile cryptic, teasing. Even Jill, standing over him with arms crossed, watching, waiting, judging. They spoke in riddles, words that twisted reality, phrases like knives slicing into his psyche. Kane tried to respond, but his lips would not move. His heart raced, though he knew it was an illusion, for he was not breathing, not alive, or perhaps not fully. Pain returned then, sharper, more insistent, gnawing at his limbs, yet also strangely distant. Kane felt as if he were floating above his body, seeing himself sprawled on the hospital bed, monitors beeping, tubes and wires tethering him to life. He could see Lily sitting beside him, her hand clutching his, her face streaked with tears, the kind of tears that spoke louder than words ever could. He wanted to speak to her, to reassure her, to tell her he was still there, still fighting, but the connection was fractured. Time became meaningless. Hours, or perhaps days, slid past in this state of suspended consciousness. Kane's mind wandered into memories he had tried to forget. The pain of losing a child, the bitterness of family betrayals, moments of love and passion now tinged with guilt. Faces blurred together, merging into a kaleidoscope of human emotion, and Kane felt every bit of it, every pang of regret, every flicker of hope, every surge of fear. In one moment, he was back at the Ashby Ranch in Australia, watching a younger version of himself with his parents. The warmth of the sun on his face, the innocence of childhood untouched by deceit or heartbreak. Then the scene shifted to the present, a painful reminder of all that had been lost. Kane's body ached, but his mind was trapped in a liminal space, a purgatory where every memory was amplified, every emotion intensified, every truth undeniable. And yet, amidst the chaos, there were fragments of clarity. He remembered his children, the moments of quiet joy with Lily, the laughter, the love that had carried him through the darkest nights. Those memories became anchors, tiny lights in the darkness, guiding him, urging him back. The voice of Lily returned, stronger this time, more insistent. "Kane, open your eyes. Come back to me." It pierced through the veil of unconsciousness like a lighthouse cutting through a storm. Slowly, painfully, Kane felt awareness returning. It was not immediate, not complete, but it was enough. His fingers twitched, a flutter of movement that mirrored the flutter of consciousness stirring within him. His eyelids, heavy and uncooperative, began to lift. The world returned in fragmented snapshots. The sterile hospital ceiling, the machines, the soft hum of life around him. And then, finally, he saw her, Lily, sitting at his side, hand in hand, her eyes wide with relief, a mixture of exhaustion and love etched across her face. Tears welled in his own eyes as he tried to speak, to tell her he was okay, but the words came out as a whisper, weak and fragile. Lily leaned closer, pressing her forehead to his, whispering reassurances, grounding him. Kane felt the warmth of her presence seep into him, restoring a part of him that had been lost, fractured in the darkness. The monitors beeped steadily, marking the slow, deliberate rhythm of life, but Kane knew it would never be the same. The experience, the unconscious drift through memory, fear, and regret, had changed him. He had faced himself in ways he never had before, confronted truths he had long avoided. And though the world outside his mind remained fraught with danger, deception, and heartbreak, he knew he had something worth fighting for. Family, love, and the fragile, unbreakable bond that tethered him to life.